I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the News du Jour, a calmer space to consume the news. So I wanted to give an apology for missing yesterday's episode. I had, unfortunately, some personal things going on Sunday, so needed to take care of those, and I really appreciate you guys listening to our replay of our Corals bonus episode yesterday because it's such an important episode and I feel like we reference it constantly throughout the News du Jour, like on a day-to-day basis. So I felt like if there was one that I could pick that was really, very relevant, it would be that one. So I hope you guys listened and enjoyed it. If you haven't listened, though, definitely make time to listen today because it's such a great episode. Anywho, I do have 3 mini stories here at the top for you guys and a ton of other news to catch you up on. So let's go ahead and dive in. Right here at the top, there is a winter outbreak of COVID, RSV, and several different forms of the flu, and they have healthcare systems really overloaded right now, especially when it comes to the elderly. New York City is actually recommending that residents there take up the mask again as well, pandemic style, and really try to keep their distance from other people. RSV actually is known for being able to live on surfaces for a prolonged period of time, unlike COVID. So, it's something that, remember the door handles and being afraid of packages and things like that. That actually is true of RSV, unlike with COVID. And something else that's really important to know about RSV is that it's hardest on kids. Again, unlike COVID. So RSV is just something to be aware of, but actually all of these things are out and about. So just, keep your guard up, and it's just something to be aware of as you're out and about this winter season. For our next mini story, the same-sex marriage bill has officially cleared both sides of Congress, and it now heads to President Biden for his signature. Such an exciting day. Let's hope that he takes time to really do this right and sign the bill with the festivity that it deserves. It's been a long time coming and marks the start of a new era. And for our last mini story today, I want to let you guys know that the FTX founder was arrested in the Bahamas after the U.S. filed criminal charges against him. He's expected to be extradited back here to the U.S. to face the music following the catastrophic crypto collapse. And now for our first longer story today, we are discussing the big winter storm. So in case you hadn't heard, a ton of flights are grounded currently due to a very severe winter storm that's making its way across the United States. Even areas of California are getting thick snow, mostly in the north. Soda Springs specifically got over 60 inches of snow in 48 hours. This storm is continuing across the Dakotas and even into western Colorado as well, with whiteout blizzard conditions expected. Even Nevada is set to get a little sprinkle of this. But areas like Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas are just getting a little bit of a storm, but then that same storm will actually strengthen as it goes over to Louisiana, Mississippi, and you can expect hail and very high winds in those areas. So it's definitely time to tune into your local weather channels if you live in any of those states, and just err on the side of caution, guys. Certain highways are already closed, airports are grounding their flights, so if you have travel plans, make sure that it's safe before you head out. Better safe than sorry. And next up, we are discussing the Brittney Griner return. So Brittney Griner arrived safely in Houston, Texas at a joint army base where she's being examined and tended to medically, both mentally and physically. But of course, it wasn't long before people were taking this joyful moment of bringing Brittney home and using it, of course, to make their own points. Everyone is loving the opportunity to jump on their soapbox. So here are just a few of the comments being made and sort of the agendas that are spinning with her return. First up, people are using this as a platform for activism for the WNBA. So like making people more aware of the WNBA and their athletes and taking care of them, etc. There's also outrage over Paul Whelan's lingering detention, which is understandable, but you know, the White House made it very clear that their options were bring Brittney home or bring no one home. So it seems like there wasn't an option to bring Paul home. People are also pissed about letting out the quote-unquote merchant of death in exchange for Brittney, saying that we got a bad deal and that when it comes to prisoner exchanges, they may not be worth it and they may be setting kind of a dangerous precedent. Like, oh, if you snatch up an American abroad, you can basically get serious hardened criminals out of prison here in the U.S. People are also saying that Americans detained here in America for weed-related crimes should also be released, which is something that people have been calling for a long time, but they're using what happened with Brittney, given that it was weed-related, to get on that soapbox. And then other people are trying to say that athletes and celebrities get better treatment in these types of situations, like in comparison to Paul Whelan. But again, you know, it's hard to kind of make that argument given that their supposed crimes in Russia were quite different. They're quite different people. You know, he was former military, so I feel like Russia has more to hang their hat on with him. It's not necessarily treatment on our end that is making it different. But all of this, even the good causes, are a little tiresome given that the woman has barely been home a day or two. Like maybe we could give her a week to breathe and then start on all our commentary. But, you know, that's not how the world works. Brittney, on the other hand, has already said that she plans to dedicate herself to helping other Americans who are wrongfully detained abroad. So even she has her own plans to use this experience. But you know what? She should, because it's her experience to use as she will. And next up, we wanted to tell you guys about NASA's Orion. So Americans completed yet another successful trip to the moon, but this time without humans actually aboard. On Sunday, the NASA Orion splashed into the Pacific Ocean, not the Pacific Ocean, as I always try to say, the Pacific Ocean, bringing Artemis 1, the test flight, to a happy end. The purpose of this trip was to test the spacecraft to make sure that it works the way that they wanted to before putting people actually on board to head back to the moon. This trip symbolically ended on the 50th anniversary of the landing of Apollo 17, which was the last time that NASA had astronauts walking on the moon. This obviously comes at a time when tensions with Russia are quite possibly as high as they were during the Cold War. But it doesn't seem like they have any intention to compete with us on this front, as they are putting all of their money and all of their resources into their war in Ukraine. NASA has been doing big things lately, though, with hitting asteroids off their course and now prepping for their next human-led trip to the moon. It's exciting times when it comes to space exploration. And lastly for today, we are going to discuss a beloved sports commentator dropping dead in Qatar after being detained. So, a man by the name of Grant Wahl died in Qatar while covering the World Cup. He was known and beloved world over. His death does seem pretty strange too. I really hope that someone is investigating it. He was only 49 years old and a seemingly healthy person to the outside world, and the only thing we really know about his death is that he collapsed at the World Cup Games. His cause of death still has not been released. But the real reason that this all feels fishy to me personally is because he was actually detained in Qatar right before this for wearing an LGBTQ rainbow t-shirt. You see, he was straight and happily married, but his brother is gay, and he wore this shirt to support his brother. You see, sports events like this, of this magnitude, on this level, like the World Cup, can be used as an opportunity to grab attention and put it towards social issues. Grant really liked doing this. And just think about the Iranian protesters outside the games, etc. Grant was certainly not the only person doing this. But he was just wanting to do the same, and the Qatari officials asked him to remove his shirt due to its support of the LGBTQ plus community. Grant refused. He was then held for refusing to remove his t-shirt. Eventually, the head of security realized who he was and actually came down to personally shake his hand and free him, but the incident led him to make this comment on the subject, quote, "It left me wondering about what it's like for Qataris who are held outside of the World Cup Games who are gay, because this was something that I had to deal with at an event that was being covered globally," end quote. Grant had also written about the mistreatment of workers creating the stadiums for the World Cup in Qatar, and as we know, there were a number of people who died in the preparations for the World Cup due to mistreatment. So it's hard to imagine that all of this could be unrelated, but at the same time, officials are playing things close to the chest, and therefore we don't have any solid reasoning to believe that anything malicious happened. I guess we'll just wait and keep our ears out for a cause of death if they even announce it. But in terms of Grant as a person, he had an incredible career and an incredible reputation. Originally from a small town in Kansas, he attended Princeton University and then started at Sports Illustrated back in 1996, and he worked there until 2020. He wrote the first New York Times bestseller on the subject of soccer, a book called The Beckham Experiment. He covered at least 10 World Cups and 5 Olympic Games. His colleagues had only glowing things to say about him. Angel City Football Club in LA said that the game of soccer is, quote, better because of him, end quote. And the National Women's Soccer League said, quote, Grant's commitment to sharing stories of our beautiful game was unmatched, but more importantly, his integrity and thoughtfulness and kindness were central to the way he lived, end quote. By all accounts, the world lost a good one with Grant Wahl's passing. Rest in peace. And that is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "Give your gratitude space to grow, and you'll see your whole world change." If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to listen. A rate and review or shout out on social media would mean the world to us and help us be able to keep creating the news du jour. But the best way to support all of our work is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/sugarfreemedia. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram and just sugarfreemedia, all one word, on TikTok. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
broadcasting from Oklahoma.